Do you have a three-way light configuration in your home that you'd like to use a Wi-Fi switch with? You won't have to replace the dumb switch. You'll just replace one of the switches, and also you won't have to do any crazy solutions for the three-way configuration. It'll just work. Let's get to it. So in my cruising of smart home products, I found this Moe's three-way smart Wi-Fi light switch, which caught my eye because it said it was three-way. And they're showing that it has two light switches and one light, which I do have a couple situations in my home where I have a three-way configuration that doesn't really fit what I showed how to do a true three-way with a Shelly 1, because the power comes in one side and then the light is fed from another, and I would have to do some rewiring with it. I haven't done those switches just yet. I want to see if this would fix my problem. So let's check this out. It says it's a three-way Wi-Fi light switch. It says it supports AC 90 volts to 250 volts, 50 to 60 hertz, and the output current of 10 amps at 1250 watts. I'll be using much lower than that, but it definitely fits what I'll be using for some LED lighting in my home. I'll leave a link to this product in the description of the video below. So the instruction manual. Normally we don't check out the instruction manual, but I wanted to take a look and see what they were talking about with the three-way wiring. So it does look like it comes with some wire labels where you can label the wires for the traveler, the neutrals, the lines, and the loads, the ground, etc. It shows about the different configurations. You can use this in a single pole, but we're not going to use it in a single pole because we would just use another light switch that was cheaper. It shows they have the wires for the traveler, and it does connect to your three-way switch. I'm curious to see if it's going to do the different configuration that I have in my home, where I mentioned before, where the power comes in one box and the light is fed from another. So there's the typical Smart Life app or the Tuya app. We're not going to probably do that. We're going to end up putting Tasmota on it. So check out the switch. It comes with a screwless faceplate, and you will notice, unlike the previous like Moe's and Oidem dimmers that I've covered, and this is not dimming, by the way, it's just an on-off switch. This will fit a regular Decora switch because it has the regular screws and plus the screw for the faceplate right here, so it will fit your regular Decora faceplate. And this is one that I have, and there is a little protective cover on here making the switch kind of shiny. I'll pull it off later, but you can see it does fit, and the holes line up on both the top and the bottom, so it does fit a regular Decora faceplate without doing any modification of the faceplate, which is good. So it looks like on the back you're going to have your neutral, your ground, black wire is going to be your line. They call it load, but I guess depending on the configuration. And then we have our two wires to tie in for, looks like one of them for the light bulb and then one be for the traveler. So we'll give it a shot. And also kind of cool, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, it says IC TYWE3S. So awesome. That's the same little Tuya module that we've always been flashing and to put Tasmota on it. So before we do that, I do want to check out doing this in some various three-way configurations first before we put Tasmota on it or whatever firmware you like. We're going to check out the different configurations for three-way. So let's get this wired up. So first things first, make sure and turn the breaker off first, and never assume the breaker's turned off or the light switch is turned off. Don't have to be this brand, but get you a pin tester if you don't have one. I highly recommend it to everyone. It'll save your life one day. Literally. It's real simple to use. You turn it on. Usually the model will turn green or something to show you it's on and working, or it has an audio confirmation to show that the batteries aren't dead. And all you do is you simply touch it. You don't have to put it really close to it, but it depends on how close your model. Most of these are non-contact. You just put it kind of close to it, and it'll go off showing you its mains voltage is on. Highly recommend it. It's super simple to use. That way you can test to see if wires have mains voltage in it. So let's get to the wiring. So in this configuration, up at the top left, I had the power comes in. This will go to the three-way smart switch. you'll have your wire that goes across the room and ties into a normal dumb three-way switch. You got your red, your traveler, your white, your ground, your black. And then the power will feed out of this box over to the light receptacle. Now what I have here is I have just a circuit tester so I can see if the circuit's correct. And because I want to put a load on it, I have a lamp that's plugged in at the bottom, just with a simple LED bulb. So let's see how this works out. Also, I have my phone in the back on the Tuya Smart app, so we can toggle and try all different scenarios and see if we can break this. So there's a little small LED at the bottom. We'll push this one, it's just a toggle rocker. You see the lights turn on, and also the phone turns on. Turns the light off. Of course, the phone has a little delay, but that's the cloud. We'll deal with that later. Now let's try the dumb switch. Flip it, turns on. Great. Go across the room, push this button. Turns off. You see the lights turn off. The phone will turn off in a couple seconds. There you go. Lights turn on. Let's turn it off from here. It turns off. The cloud will turn off. Sure enough. Let's turn it back on. So every scenario we've been able to do, and this works great. I'm very impressed, because this is a problem I've been having in my home, and I really just didn't want to have to rewire those lights so I could go put, say, a Shelly 1 in it. And because the Shelly 1s work great, as in my previous video I've showed the Shelly 1s, they work great in a three-way configuration because you can use mains voltage, but you had to have the power in the same box as the feeding, and none of my three-ways are like that in my home. So this definitely saves me some time, and I can just throw in this instead and not have to rewire everything and keep the switch on the side the same. So we're going to go ahead and pause and rewire this where the power and the light receptacle come out of the same box. And then this is just sitting over across the room. Let's try it out. So we're doing a slightly different configuration where the power line comes in on the left, feeds the smart switch, and also the power receptacle or the light also feeds out of the same box as the smart switch, and then you just have a dumb switch three-way across the room. It's another configuration that I've seen in many homes. I can't cover all the three-way configurations, but if it covers these main two ones, then it should pretty much cover all the other different ones. I'll leave a link in the description of the video that'll help you out with different three-way configurations to find the one that matches your home. So let's check this out. We'll turn on the button. The light comes on. We see the states on the phone. We'll turn off the three-way. The light turns off. Give it a second. There's the cloud. Turn the light back on. There's the light. There's the states. We can turn it off from the phone. Turn it back on from the button. Of course, it works. It's a three-way Wi-Fi switch. Awesome. Now let's put Tasmota on this. So if it's like previous switches, we should just be able to put a blade in the side and pop this apart. There's no screws in here or anything. There's nothing behind the label. Just a little bit of pressure and it should pop apart. And there she is. So the ground is going to hang up a little bit, but if we're careful with it, we can pull the ground off. The module we're all familiar with. And they gave us a plug to unplug it, which is awesome. So it doesn't look like they gave us any type of header, unfortunately, but we do have some screws if we want to take it out of here so we don't worry about melting the plastic when we're soldering. So typically when we're soldering this, you've got your RX and your TX up top, you've got your ground at the bottom, and then the GPIO 0 be here in the middle, and then you'll have 3.3 volts on the bottom left. Since this is unplugged, we don't have a button to use, so we're going to need to also solder that GPIO 0, unfortunately. So we plugged in the device. Your COM port may be different than mine. We'll choose our firmware bin. This is one I use. You'll be using your Sonoff bin file you download, and we'll hit flash. As soon as this window comes up, getting the little dots, you know you got it. If not, which I happen to in this case, I reversed the RX and TX, and the first time it did not come up. So if you don't get it, check your connections, reverse your RX and TX, and also make sure all your GPIO 0 is being held to ground, which I use a little header I soldered together with the 3 wires to hold GPIO 0 to ground. So once you get the flash complete, we'll click OK. We'll make sure and remove GPIO 0. We'll cycle power on the unit, and we'll pull up Termite and put in our backlog for our SSID and password to get it on our Wi-Fi. So we'll pull up Termite, make sure it's selected with COM4, 115,200 for your baud rate, and you should be able to press enter. And if you see this, you know you successfully connected, and we can put in our backlog for Tasmota. So once you get the device on your Wi-Fi and you pull up the IP address, let's go ahead and unsolder it, and we'll put it back in the switch. We'll power it back up with mains power, and we'll see if we can configure it and get the relay and the LEDs working. So the cover's back together, switch is wired up, and you're ready to configure it. First, you need to go to configuration, set up your MQTT host, username, and password, and the topic you'd like. And the topic will just be a unique name that you're going to call this switch. So once you're back into Tasmota, we can go into the console, and we'll paste a backlog of commands that automatically set up the switch with the various GPIO pins and rules that we need for this special switch. I'll leave all the backlog commands for you to copy and paste in the description of the video. So paste those in, hit enter. The switch should reboot, and she'll come back up to the console. That rule 1 is set by typing rule 1 and enter. And you should see rule 1 is on with the rule of on event on, do power to toggle, with the event off, do power to toggle. And that way you know all of your backlog commands took. Now, real quick rundown of this switch. It's a little different switch. There's 2 toggle buttons, and the reason for the 2 toggle buttons is due to the way they designed this 3-way switch. The toggle button, the relay may not always be in the on or off position due to the way the 3-way switch is designed. So one way I came up to get around this issue is GPIO 14 is always the sensor of the actual if the switch is on or not. So I tied that into switch 1, and that'll be on power 1, and I tied that into relay 1, which actually isn't the relay. It's actually the white LED on the switch. You'll see the white LED turn on, and that's just keeping the state of the switch, whether the light is truly on or off. Relay 2 is the actual relay, but like I say, because the 3-way, it can be either way. And then button 2 is actually the button on the front of the switch, because we have to send the toggle from button 2 to relay 2. So it's a little different switch, and pay attention in the actual Home Assistant configuration, which I'll show in a little bit. The state topics and the command topics are going to be a little different than what you're used to due to this. But it's pretty simple. You just copy and paste it in, and it'll work like your normal switch. And will still be in a 3-way configuration, which is great. So if we notice, they're both showing as on, but actually the light is not on. I found that if it does get out of sync with the state, if you do toggle number 1 to the actual state and then push the button, it'll stay in sync after that. I did get that one time, but once you do that, you can see push turning off. And the first one is going to be your state of off, which sometimes I notice also it does take a couple seconds to cycle to off. It's like the sensor inside here is detecting the voltage, gives it a few seconds to stabilize, and then flips to off. But as you can see, if we do flip the switch here in the middle, the dumb switch, it will turn on, and you'll see Tasmota says on, and we'll pay attention to the one on the left because the relay is not actually changing here. You won't hear it, but it changes, and the sensor will pick it up and cycle back to off, as you'll see. So there it is. Let's take a look at the configuration in Home Assistant. So the configuration in Home Assistant, it goes in your configuration.yaml, or if you split it up, your lights YAML, whatever you decide to use. It's pretty simple. It's much like your regular Sonoff Basic, except there's one difference. Make sure that you're using power 1 for the state topic. That's that what I showed you on the left. That's going to listen because it has that sensor that details that the light is on or off. So we have to listen to that, power 1. The command topic is where it's going to get different. Typically, with the command topic, we're using power 1 or power 2, etc., to change the command of the light to whether to turn it on or off. We couldn't do that in this case because of the three-way, and we never know which way it's on or off with the exact relay. So what you have to do is you have to tell it to go do a command of event on or off. And the rule inside Tasmota will listen for the on or off event that will then in turn toggle the actual relay of the switch, which will turn the light on or off. And then we'll get back on the state from the sensor inside the switch on power 1 to know if the light is on or off. So it's pretty simple. Just copy and paste this. Of course, you'll change where I have SW-hallway to the topic that you chose in MQTT. Put that in your configuration YAML and restart, check config, etc. on Home Assistant. You should see it appear in your Home Assistant GUI. So here's a switch here in Home Assistant. Once we reset it up, as you can see from we push the button, the light does turn on pretty quickly. I can go over here. Now, one thing I have noticed, this sensor, as I mentioned before, the sensor takes a couple of seconds. So if you do go over here and say turn off the dumb switch, you wait a couple seconds and then you'll see the switch actually turn off. And that's the only downside I can say to this switch. Wish they made that a little quicker. I'm not sure what that quirk is, but hey, at least it does work. So I'll give them that. And of course, if you do come over here and turn it back on using the dump switch, it does turn on very quickly. It's just when you go and turn it off, it takes a second. And also, if we turn it on in Home Assistant, the light does turn on. As you can see on the circuit tester here, when you turn it off, you will see the switch flip back and forth because it doesn't turn off quick enough for Home Assistant. So it did turn off here. You'll see Home Assistant's going to flip back on, then it receives a state and goes back off. That's the only weird quirk about it, but it all works. So there you have it. A three-way switch in various three-way configs. You don't have to rewire anything in your home or do any weird thing with switches. Just replace one of your switches in your three-way configuration, and you'll leave your dumb switch in place. You'll have Tasmota for all your local control and ease of use with MQTT and various other features. Again, we'll leave the link to the switch in the description of the video. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and catch the next video. And y'all take care.